Hello, everyone. I'm New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. Thank you for joining us with our conversation with Westchester County Executive, the Honorable Ken Jenkins. We're celebrating Black History Month in the month of February. What we've been doing, our tradition for the past few years, is to have conversations with prominent Black New Yorkers, often elected officials, although not always, people who are making a difference in the community and individuals whose personal story is certainly part of the history of New York State. So I'm really delighted to have Ken with us, who is a friend of longstanding and as of his own election on February 11th, also part of Black History Month, Westchester County's first Black county executive. You know, we just came off of a couple of days ago before doing this conversation, the annual Black, Puerto Rican, and Hispanic and Asian caucus weekend, where there were many important conversations going on. Our Comptroller's Office had, going into caucus weekend, our 18th annual Emerging Manager and MWBE conference to provide information on opportunities to manage our pension fund. Really targeted to new opportunities, particularly for Black and brown firms and women-owned firms. So we have always celebrated diversity in the Comptroller's Office. It's has been from the beginning of my tenure a strategic priority. Diversity is a strength, not just the right thing to do, but good business sense. We certainly found that with managing our pension fund. So in a sense, we view celebrating all communities of New York State, certainly including the African American community, as something that's not just a one-off in a given month, but something that needs to be recognized each and every day. So let's dive right in. I have to say, part of the many events on caucus weekend was the early morning breakfast last Sunday, the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus. And I have to say, County Executive Jenkins, you got quite a round of applause when you were introduced at that event, just coming off of your historic election in your own right on February 11th. And I should point out, and I'm going to have you talk, more of your history and your path to get to where you are today. But although you were elected on February 11th, in fact, you've been serving in that position since January. When your predecessor, George Latimer, was sworn into Congress, and we know he's going to do a great job there for Westchester and the Bronx and for all of New York. But I think even more significant is the fact that throughout George Latimer's tenure as county executive, you were his deputy county executive. So you've been part of the governing team of Westchester County for a number of years now. You certainly did not need any on-the-job training to be the acting county executive, or certainly to be elected in your own right. And of course, you've got to run again in November, I'm told. So this is going to be quite a busy year for you. So just for those who may not be familiar with your path to this very important position, how about introducing yourself to our audience?
Well, first, thank you, Tom, Comptroller DiNapoli. It's really a privilege to be here with you. I almost got as much of a round of applause as you did at the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus annual breakfast that they had on part of caucus weekend. But thank you. For me, Tom, we've been knowing each other for several years. I started in Westchester County as the president of the Yonkers branch of the NAACP with our good friend Hazel Dukes, President Hazel Dukes. And for me, being engaged in the community has always been something that has been something that I was focused on for our family, my mom and my dad, and my brother. But the reality is, coming and navigating through that, I was the chair of the Yonkers Democratic Committee, and then followed in the footsteps of the great Andrea Stewart Cousins when she got elected to the New York State Senate in 2006, to be able to be the county legislator, served as chairman of the board of legislators 10 years basically after George Latimer was county executive, doing his thing. The reality is that I've been able to be involved and engaged in our political scenario, and also in our elected side, as well as the appointed side and the volunteer side, all three. But serving as county executive with deputy county executive with George Latimer in 2018. I was part of his transition team. George and I competed for this role. We never say we ran against each other because we didn't. We were all seeking to bring the best we could to Westchester. And as he liked to tell people, at the end, they got both of us, right? So County Executive Latimer and now Congressman George Latimer was going to do a great job for us there. And I did that for the past 7 years as deputy county executive and appointed on January 6th to be county executive. And as you pointed out, running in the special election to fill the remaining components of the term till the end of the year. And now we're on the path to running in November from last night. So again, for me, Tom, it's just been a privilege to be able to continue to work with so many people in Westchester County. And that's what you were describing as the amount of love that comes back from our friends and from the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus. But generally, almost everywhere we go, there's just a general feeling of support and happiness that says, all right, people that put in the work, being the district leader, working in the community, working with nonprofit organizations, going through challenging situations, and making sure to have relationships across Westchester County. People have been really very, very, very supportive. So thank you, though.
Well, certainly looking at your resume, and I would encourage our viewers to, check out your website. You gave very quick summary to all the community engagement you were involved in with so many organizations prior to being an elected official. And I also noted, looking at your bio, you've certainly identified with public service and elective office and serving in government. But similar to my background, you also did work in the private sector, in telecommunications and technology. And certainly those are very important areas. So you also bring to the table, that business experience as well, not just that elected experience. And I'm glad you pointed out the relationship between you and George Latimer. You were competitors, but as doesn't happen very often these days, it ended up being a collaboration and ended up being a real partnership that was for the benefit of the people of Westchester County. And look, we all know it's a challenging time in government, balancing the needs to provide services and certainly keeping in mind the taxpayer interest. And as you recall, because you were part of turning it around, Westchester County had some real budget and fiscal issues. And
Absolutely.
as you know, Controller's Office keeps an eye on those items, right? So give us a sense of now that it's yours, right, as county exec, what are your priorities for certainly the coming year? And we'll say coming years. We'll put a plural on that.
Well, one of the things, again, when we walked in the door in 2018, Westchester County, as you pointed out, Comptroller Tom DiNapoli, that we were fiscally stressed. I mean, you did the research, the analysis, and determined that we had some challenges. When we walked in the door, we were a AAA bonded county. When we came in, we were downgraded from our rating agencies, Fitch, S&P, and Moody's. And a lot of that was by doing one-time expense or borrowing for things or getting revenue from one-time revenue things, as opposed to doing the things that were necessary to help balance the books and making sure that we were moving forward with that. So we were able to do that. We were able to accomplish that over the last 6 years of not having a property tax increase, because we had a 1 cent to 1 penny sales tax increase in Westchester County for those municipalities that were not cities. So it was really trying to level the playing field to make sure that whether you shopped in White Plains, which is our county seat, or in one of the villages, that you paid a similar rate. And again, it was an optional charge. You pay when you go out and buy something, you could choose not to buy something. So we were able to balance that with our for property taxes. So again, we've been able to hold the line on property taxes for the last 6 years, restoring our fund balance, which was something that was pointed out in the comptroller's stress report, that we did not have reserves to be able to handle scenarios when they come up, the emergency scenarios as we see that are happening at the federal government level. It never happens at the state level to that same level of impact, but we were not able to withstand those kind of things when we first walked in the door. We had less than $50 million in our reserve account Now we have $560 million in that, and the rating agencies have rewarded us with that. Fitch has made sure that we have reaffirmed our AAA credit rating, which allows us to be able to borrow money on the $385 million worth of projects Westchester County does for safety, security, making sure we're dealing with water issues, et cetera. And S&P rated us this year to AAA once again. We're at the threshold for Moody's. Moody's gave us a AA1 with a positive outlook. So we're going to continue to work as hard as we can to hold the line on taxes, making sure that the people of Westchester have the cost of living that's in control. And again, that depends on where you are, right? Cost of living, if you're in a more higher income bracket means one thing versus the ones that are in lower income brackets. But we are going to fight for everyone just the same to make sure that Westchester can be as affordable as possible, building over 6,600 affordable housing units. We're going to continue to do that work in partnership with state government. We can't go about this alone and making sure people stay safe and secure. But from a financial perspective, we turned it around, and it was based on the information that was provided from the Comptroller's office in the stress report, and we were able to take the steps necessary. We resolved every union contract that we had. We had people in our CSEA that hadn't got a contract when we walked in 2018 for 7 years. Everyone in Westchester County has been under contract. We have a couple that have expired now. The last two that we have left is our Police Benevolent Association, which expired last year, and our DA investigators. So again, those are putting us in a good position. And again, Tom, because of the work that your office, the Comptroller's office did in reviewing our stress report, gave us the roadmap that we needed to make sure we were in good footing, which again is the purpose. Again, the Comptroller making sure, in the Comptroller's office, making sure that we're taking care of those valuable tax dollars that we get invested with from the property tax owners, and making sure those dollars are spent appropriately.
Yeah, I appreciate how you characterize it, because it's exactly the point I always try to make. When we do the fiscal stress scoring, it's not meant to be a gotcha on our municipalities and school districts. It's really meant to identify issues before they become a crisis, and to provide, as you said, a roadmap to solutions. And I think it's just so important at this time, because there really are big question marks. You touched on the federal relationship to the states and to the localities. Some real questions about with the new administration, what kind of cutbacks may be on the horizon. We don't know the answer to that. It's certainly something I'm concerned about as we're debating the state budget. Do we have the contingencies in place to deal with any cutbacks, especially on the Medicaid program? We've been hearing a lot about that. So I think to maintain the fiscal strength and the budget strength of Westchester is absolutely imperative. You're totally correct. When people think of Westchester, in many ways, I guess similar to Nassau County where I live, it's very much viewed as a suburban middle class community. Although you also have very if I could use the phrase, very developed or urbanized community. Yonkers, your home city, White Plains you mentioned, and certainly when you look at the demographics of the county, a very diverse community, and that diversity has been continuing, which again from my perspective is a strength. How does your own upbringing, not just your community involvement that we touched on, but I believe your dad was a police officer, your mom was a nurse, right? So you grew up in a middle class family. How does that background inform your approach to public service and elective office?
Well, yeah, and again, my dad was a New York City police officer, NYPD sergeant when he retired, and my mom was a nurse who ended up, she started in Bellevue, in critical care in the ICU in Bellevue, and she ended up being the director of quality assurance at Downstate Medical Center. So again, we had that built into our world from being young, that in order to make a difference, you have to participate and being engaged and involved in public service, and then whether that was volunteering in campaigns when I was a young guy and a child and working in the Bronx. With my grandmother, was involved in political scenarios in New York City, in the Bronx. But to continue to do that level of investment for the community. And again, you can't sit on the sidelines. And right now, in this particular time, it shows us what's happening at the federal government, how important it is for people to be engaged and involved and make sure their voices are heard. And I had that ability because that's what I saw every day with my mom and my dad. All right, being involved and talking to people, making a difference, building relationships, and to be able to move the conversations in community. As you pointed out, Tom, that you said, diversity is our strength. We like to say, in Westchester, it starts with two words or two letters, WE. It means that we're all engaged and involved in making sure that, again, diversity is our strength. And because we have such diversity of economics in Westchester County, I mean, most people don't realize that Westchester County has an agricultural district, an ag district, and we have horse farms in rural areas, just like we have our city and our urban centers. As you pointed out, the cities mostly have our urban center where we have huge amounts of populations compared to everywhere else. Then we have rural communities and bedroom communities and nice bucolic environments that we have, and everyone has different needs, and that's the balance and the challenge in being involved in government. So we work really hard to ensure that we are moving up and down the line so we can talk to our local municipal partners. We like to continue to say to them that we are partners. We're an older sibling. We're not a bigger sibling. We're not mom or dad. We're really siblings, and we're just a bigger brother, a bigger sister to those local municipalities. And that partnership has allowed us to be able to make a difference. And again, understanding that diversity, and again, it may be diversity ethnicity, ethnically, or with gender, or anywhere from an agriculture, a rural, our urban centers. Everyone has different challenges, and again, to work through those and identify solutions to them has been a blessing for us to be able to do. But that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of meetings and conversations, and that's what I got taught growing up in a household with public service members, blue collar workers, a nurse and a police officer, NYPD, to be able to listen to the concerns and make a difference. So again, whether we talk about investing in law enforcement, in Westchester County, we have Commissioner Terrence Rayner, and we continue to make sure that we're investing in our police public services, but also working with our community organizations to make sure that the respect and understanding for the community is there as well. So we have all that work, and it didn't start with us in 2018. We continue to make sure to modify and make changes. But again, that's the challenge of being in government at this point in time. We don't know what's going to come out of Washington any given day. And for many of us, and I know for you, Tom, is looking around saying, wait a second, those impacts can have negative impact to the people that we serve. When the federal government decided they were going to shut off the valve for funding, accessing funding, that was a problem in many different areas. And whether that was for our labs and research that provides services for our local law enforcement, or whether it's in our health services with the avian flu things that are happening, that we're not able to get information back and forth, or just the social services that we provide that are usually pass-throughs through the state. So whether it's for childcare dollars, whether it's for social services, that a lot of those federal dollars get passed through from the state and then down to our local municipalities like the county to make a difference. And again, you're doing all that. We're doing all that while you and the state level are going through the proposed budget and trying to make differences. Again, we're all trying to be as nimble as possible. But we've been following that model that you have done in the comptroller's office, Tom, to show that your time as an assembly member in the county. You always show that government can work. And when we walk through the door every day, I feel for all of our colleagues here in Westchester County, we understand that we can make a difference for someone. And it's not a budget line. And I've always heard you say this, Tom, it's not a budget line. That's not a number on a piece of paper or on a spreadsheet. that's a person, that's a human being that's at the end of that. The dirt things that we do in government are services. And as you pointed out, most people don't think about, most of the elected officials had other jobs other than being elected officials, that your private sector service helps inform the decisions and how you make those decisions. Not like they're doing at the federal government, that you come in and take a meat cleaver to things, that you come in and you analyze and you make careful decisions that are based on information that you receive, like a stress report, that you can then make a difference on how people feel and are impacted every day. And we've been able to do that, again, with lots of partnerships, a lot of conversations, and making sure we're taking that time to not only build relationships, that you nurture those relationships and you actually work together to solve problems, and government can work. In New York State and in our county, and here in Westchester County, we try to do that every day to show how government can work. We don't worry, and we don't joke about, we're from the government, we're here to help. We know that people understand that that may be a negative view, but we work hard to dispel that. And because, again, of the guidance that we receive from the Comptroller's office and our partnerships with the governor and the state legislature, both sides of those things. Leader Cousins is from Yonkers on the Senate side, who I followed on the Board of Legislators, and Speaker Hasty is right next door to us in Westchester County from the Bronx. So we have great relationships with everyone, which is why those partnerships are so important, and that's how we can continue to move Westchester forward.
Yeah. So well said. And county government is such an important level of government, because you really, as county exec, can serve as the convener of all the different interests, all the different local governments within the county, the nonprofits, the business sector, and really be a regional voice, which I think is very important. And not to get too political or partisan, I think in the context of what we're going through right now with the changes from the November elections, your election on February 11th was one of the first in the country to measure how people are feeling about, politics of the party and points of view. And I think many people were very heartened that your very positive message about what government can do and how to do it in a way that's very inclusive and recognizes the importance and strength of diversity. I think the fact that you had such a lopsided victory gave a lot of folks hope that we're still going to be on the right path to the future, at least in Westchester and hopefully in New York State as well. We'll let George Latimer and others figure out what's going on in Washington. But as we wrap up, and as we kicked off the conversation, we are celebrating Black History Month. You are part of Black History in New York State now, the first Black to be elected county executive, first appointed, now elected in your own right. Reflect back on what that means to you, and maybe if you could talk about either some individuals in history that you may have viewed as role models, or more contemporary mentors in your life that have made a difference, because certainly, whether you like it or not, you are now a role model in your own right, and a figure that I think young people are going to look up to and say, hey, if Ken Jenkins could do that, maybe I could do it as well. And I know you've always had a great interest in the next generation. I know you're a proud, I should mention, you and your wife, Deb, have 3 children. If I'm correct, February, besides winning an election, you became a grandfather also, right?
February 3rd.
So there you go. So that's pretty. February's been quite a month for you. But reflect on you being a person of history now, how you got there, and what what you would say to the next generation in terms of their interest in being involved in the community.
Well, and again, thank you for that. I mean, one of the things, Tom, that when we look around, when you're navigating through history, you don't take the time to look backwards and say, all right, oh, wow, that was great. When there was a young man that was serving as the youngest person on the school board, and then moving down the path as you did, again, you didn't look at that time and say, oh, I'm making history, I'm doing all these great things. It's like, you know what? You're just doing the best job that you can, and always putting yourself in the position, as people like to say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? And the things that you have done and walk through this the path of trying to show people, when you put in the work and you put in the the volunteer work and the professional work, you're working hard on your skills as possible. I mean, I think that that's been, again, for me, the most gratifying thing. A person that connects with both of us, Dr. Hazel Dukes, who took the time at an event that we were both at, reminded folks that we both had the same history as far as Dr. Dukes, Hazel Dukes, being able to help navigate and support and mentor and give us information. And there's so many people along the way, but for me, Tom, that has happened. I know that we are standing on the shoulders here in Black History Month. And again, with all of the challenges that are happening in Washington, it looks like there's things trying to be reversed. The reality, Black history is American history. And again, it gets to be complicated, like all history is. There's no one that wants to stand back and go, oh yeah, we did these bad things. No, that's not the point of history. Just as you said with your stress report, it's like, let us make sure that we don't duplicate things that did not work and that were negative for any one of the folks that are out there. So for me, it's been a pleasure and a privilege to be humbled to be in a position where people look up and they say, oh, well, I had this opportunity. I was reading a couple of the stories in editorials and talking about that from people that were, hey, I'm 30 years old and Westchester has its first Black county executive. And you know what? As a Black young man, I feel that gives me hope on how we can move forward and have an opportunity. I tell people all the time, it's like, you put in the work and your volunteer work and always doing the best job that you can, whatever job that is. We all have the stories of some parent, guardian, grandparent telling us, if you're going to be a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper you can be. But again, trying to make sure that you not take yourself and put yourself on a pedestal. You're just trying to work as hard as you can. And when people see that, they see it and it makes a difference. As you pointed out, with the responses that I got around from the county were, you know what, you happen to be a Black man. I'm supporting you because you're a good person and you've done this hard work and you deserve it. It's like, and I tell people all the time, you don't deserve anything. You work hard to put yourself in a position. And if people come back to you and say, you know what, that's a really good thing that you have this opportunity because you've worked so hard for it and you want to make sure that the people get elevated. But the opposite side of that is you need to put in that work. A lot of times people look around, Tom, and they just think that you showed up to be the comptroller of the state of New York. And we know that that's just not true, right? And we know that the path that you got to be named and appointed first and then elected on your own to be in this position, it was not easy to do. And people don't always have the insight and they don't always value the other works that you did, and whether that's from family members, whether that is from other role models. From Westchester County, we had a lot of role models that we had locally. Certainly, we always could look up at great role models, whether that's on the civil rights side with Martin Luther King Jr., or you can look at President Barack Obama, but lately we can look at other individuals. We have H. Carl McCall here in the state of New York, one of your predecessors, to be able to be in a position to look around and say, look, we have a lot of people that have provided and paved this way and opened the doors so that someone else can have this opportunity. And for those folks, we tell them the least that they could do is make sure that their voice gets heard in whatever ways that they can do locally. But for me, I got a chance to be with a role model every day, which was my dad, and watching how he conducted his business in New York City, working with youth gangs and patrolling around the city in this thing called Patrol Borough Bronx. And that's still around. I just saw a story about that recently, and that helped me be in a good position many times because my dad could just show up in an unmarked car in plain clothes anytime, anywhere. So that would you're on your toes, right? To be able to do that. And watching the work that my mom did as a organizer in the union, was when she first got engaged and involved. NICENA was not as engaged as it was, as it is now. The New York State Nurses Association, and she was part of an organization that was the National Association of Healthcare Executives that were getting engaged and involved and making sure that it makes a difference. Again, Tom, it's really the ability to sit down and work with folks, and then especially when people don't agree with you. in our world right now, it is such a challenge, where people could get in their own echo chamber and they're just hearing people go, yes. What I like to tell people all the time, I don't need yes people around me. I need someone to tell me no. I could do yes by myself, right? I need someone to be able to help balance and be able to say, well, what about this? Did you consider that item? And again, that came from the private sector, not from the public sector, to be able to understand and respect people. And I say this when I did this earlier this week for another Black History Month program for the Prince Home Masonic Lodge on Monday night, and they suggested that, well, what other things would you say? I was like, well, the most important person that I ever ran into in a public sector job was the janitor, followed by the secretary, right? And they're like, well, why is that? I said, well, the janitor knows who's coming in early and who's staying late, who's working as hard as they can, who might not be working as hard as they can, but the janitor knows that, and the secretary knows everything. So in the political world, the first role I had on the parties, I was secretary of the Westchester County Committee, and that was under, with Andy Spano, who was the 7th County Executive, was there, and then followed with Dave Alpert. But again, those kind of things, Tom, are the ones, and having humility at the end. I will throw in one more Tom DiNapoli reference, right?
Okay.
And I'm not sure you remember this. In 2013, I was seeking the nomination for to be run for county executive. Noam Bramson eventually did that. Mayor New Rochelle eventually was the one that won that in a convention. And you called me and you gave me your story again. And I knew some of it, but you're like, Ken, hang in there. You just continue to work as hard as you can. And you know what? That will make a difference at the end. And you know what? That was in 2013. And we're having this conversation now in February of 2025. And it just shows, again, that the kind of relationship and mentorship, and be able to have that kind of support from people around the state like you, Tom, has just been a blessing for me. And I think that all of the things that we have done for Black History Month to continue to elevate, and while people in Washington may be trying to dismantle some things, the state of New York, with your leadership, Tom, is going to make sure that we don't have those issues, because, as you pointed out in your opening remarks, that making sure that you have diversity of suppliers and investments for the best pension fund in the state, in the country, right? The most well-run pension fund in the country makes a difference. And that's what we need to maybe have some more conversations about now, where people weren't getting caught up on any specific words. They understand that when we do those kind of things, we make a difference and uplift everyone. So again, it's been, for me, this ride is been a long ride, but we're going to keep working as hard as we can to be able to make sure that we're not just making people proud that are looking up, the folks that are looking down, the Reggie Lafayette's of the world, the David world.
A legendary figure in Westchester County. Yes, he'd be
a legendary figure.
Be so proud. He is so proud that history has shined a light on you. You look, County Executive Ken Jenkins. This is your time. You are the right person for this time of challenge in government. You've got the experience. Clearly, you have the temperament and the talent and the commitment to the greater Westchester community. We didn't get out that you're a proud Iona graduate, right? We got to mention that too. And besides our shared background in telecommunications, I was an AT&T employee. I also noted, which I didn't realize before, may explain some of our affinity. I too was a Boy Scout, and I too was a senior patrol leader. I won't ask what rank you got to. I only got to Star Scout. I didn't make it to Eagle, but
I did not either.
You were an SPL, so you had that executive experience even as a Boy Scout to be leading the troop, and now you're leading the wonderful county of Westchester. Ken, we're out of time, but it's really been a wonderful conversation. Look. As I think our viewers probably figured out, you and I have been friends for a long time, and I've been a fan of yours for a long time. And I had forgotten about that conversation back in 2013, but when you mentioned it, I did remember it. And as I said then, and as has been said to me when I hit bumps in the road on my path, just don't change who you are. The opportunity will be there. As my friend Dorothy Gooseby told me a long time ago when I had a disappointment, so God has a plan for you. You just got to wait and see what it is. And God's plan for you was to be county executive, and your time is in 2025 and beyond. And any way that we can partner with you to make sure you succeed in your important leadership role for the people of Westchester County. We are there to be by your side. And I thank you for helping us celebrate Black History Month, talking about your personal story. And of course, we're going to present you with a proclamation from the Comptroller's Office celebrating Black History Month, and you're participating in our program today. So County Executive Ken Jenkins, thank you so much for your time. Good luck, and we look forward to working with you for a very long time to come.
Well, Comptroller Tom DiNapoli, thank you so much for having me on, and I really appreciate that. And again, Black history is American history. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.